For some of us in this room today, this season that we're entering into, Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and solstice and Christmas, for some of us in this room, it might be our favorite time of year. This time of year comes complete with joy and laughter and family and presents and lots of food. And for some of us in this room today, this might simply just be a season to endure, get through while counting the days until spring. And for some of us in this room today, it might be a little bit of a combination of both. It might be that combination of there's some joy and there's some laughter, but as every year, at least in my life, as we get a little bit older, the joy sometimes includes some pain or some memories, or we had people with us last year who aren't here with us this year. And so this season, as we get older, begins to get wrapped up in that sort of bittersweet love and joy and pain and loss and happiness. And it's all kind of mixed in together. And for me, that is precisely why I think there is so much beauty in this time of year. Because if we think that beauty is only found in the superficial lights and the pretty happy smiles and the perfect Facebook posts on Snapchat or Facebook, then we're not, at least me, I'm not going to resonate with that. But beauty is so much more. Authentic beauty to me encompasses all of it. The good and the bad, the ugly with the joy, the tears and the laughter, and it's all wrapped up into one, because that's who we are as human beings. If we're being truly real with ourselves and truly authentic, this time of year, for most of us, does come with some really wonderful joy. And that's okay. It's okay to be happy and love this time of year. And it might come with some tension or some fear or some pain or some memories of loss. And that's okay too. Because it's okay to be happy and sad and surrounded by people and lonely, all at the same time. The problem comes when we try to repress or not feel one aspect of it. If we're going through this season telling ourselves that everybody else around me is happy, and so I'm going to fake a smile and I'm going to pretend to be happy, or worse, we're telling ourselves that we have to be happy because that's just what you do at this time of year. I'm sure everybody already knows this, but I'm just going to state the obvious. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. But what does work, I think, is allowing ourselves to acknowledge that this time of year can be sacred. Acknowledge that there are some shadows, and yet every Sunday we light this candle to remind us that there's always light in the darkness. We have fire, which contrasts the cold nights with the warmth of the fire, and it all wraps itself together in one big ball of experience dichotomy. Because there is beauty in darkness. There is sacredness in silence. At this time of year, if we look outside, the flowers have died, the leaves have fallen off the trees, most of the bears are already hibernating or making preparations to do just that. And I've said this before, I actually say it every year, so for those of you who have been here for a while, you're not hearing anything new from me, but you're going to hear it again because it's a good reminder. The rest of nature knows that it's okay to slow down, let go, and transform in preparation for the spring. It's the humans who have a hard time acknowledging that reality. We as humans have a tendency to pretend that we're not actually part of that rhythm of nature, that we don't need the slowing down and the letting go. We just ignore our circadian rhythms and continue moving on and pushing through. And by pushing through, so to speak, we ignore a deep integral part of ourselves. We ignore our own inherent human need to rest. And I've said this before, but there is a difference between sleeping and resting. And I'm sure many of us know from experience, sleeping 10 hours or 12 hours does not always bring the rest that we need, because they're two very different things. And so if you find yourself sleeping more and still not feeling renewed, perhaps it is not the physical rest that is needed, but a mental, emotional, and spiritual slowing down that your soul is yearning for. And so how do we do this? How do we rest our souls? This is according to me, but I think we rest our souls by allowing them to stop being superficial. We rest our souls by letting our guards down, even if very briefly. We rest our soul by releasing the facade that we are hiding behind and showing the world, and allowing our deepest inner being to shine forth and surface. We rest our souls by making the time to take our masks off, if only for ourselves occasionally, because it requires so much energy to keep up appearances. It takes so much mental and emotional energy to hide who we really are deep inside. And sometimes we hide ourselves so deeply that we forget who we are and wonder where that little divine spark went. And then what happens is the hiding place becomes permanent. And then we get lost. And then we get exhausted, and as a result, stop looking for that little pilot light that's still inside of us altogether. Sometimes we fear that if we let our guard down, if only for a moment, the tears might come flooding in. And if we open up and allow ourselves to really feel, or we allow those tears to come through, we fear that they may never stop. And so we just don't go there. But I reminded you all last year, and I'm going to remind you all again today. I've never met a person who started crying and never stopped. Because crying is part of our human experience. But so is loving and laughing and smiling again. And so many times it's all wrapped up together in one big messy ball of human experience. And that's why we end up with the phrase laughing through our tears. Because it's never one or the other. It never is. And if you are in your life right now, and for you, you're saying to yourself, well, but for me it is, then I invite you to just think about that. And it can be either way. If you're always happy, and there's never anything that is going wrong, or there's never any emotion coming out, I invite you to look at that. And if you think that all that there is in life is the pain or the loss or the grief, I invite you to look at that. Because it's never all of one and none of the other. It just isn't. And what we try to do and what we need to do is allow ourselves to find that balance. And so slowing down, turning it off, listening to that still inner voice is how we rest. Because the darkness, the shorter nights, it serves a purpose. Silence serves a purpose. It allows us to get in touch with that inner place that we don't always normally go on our own. And I would say it's that dark inner place. If it has become a stranger to us, then that is the place that it's so important we begin to get to know again. Because that's the place where we find our humanity. That's the place within us that reminds us that we're real, that reminds us that we're alive. We can't, nor should we want to, live our entire lives on the surface of who we are meant to be, because that only creates a shell of a life. And I like to tell this story that I've told for a few years in a row now, because when I think of this time of year, it's this image that comes to me every year. And this was a few years ago, and so the kitten is no longer a kitten, but a full-grown cat. But it was 3 or 4 years ago that the kitten in the Jones household, in her exuberant joy, did a flying acrobatic leap right for our Christmas tree, and everything went crashing down. And in the midst of the shards of glass and broken ornaments and the downed tree was a kitten who had found a ball of yarn. And all was well with the world, because what can possibly go wrong if you are a kitten and in the chaos and the world crashing around you, you come up with a ball of yarn? There truly is no greater joy, because life is all encompassing. It just is. And we now have a much smaller tree, and we have no glass ornaments, and probably won't for a really long time, because cats live for a while. But I just love that. I love that image, and that image, it's like slow motion. Like, it comes to me every year, and it just, to me, encompasses what it's all about. That it's not all perfect and glittery. It's just not. But it's not all broken shards of glass either. And things do break. And then they get cleaned up and they get put back together. And the other reminder that I share every year comes from our friend Ernie, who is no longer with us. And about 5 or 6 years ago, he sent me this email about something called, and I'm sure that I pronounce it wrong every year, and Sandy always corrects me, but it's a Japanese word called kuntsugi. Is that right?
I can't remember.
Okay, I'm going to call it kuntsugi. And basically, it is this concept or this idea that if a piece of pottery or ceramic has a crack and a repair needs to be made, the artist fills the crack with material that includes gold, silver, or platinum dust. And as a result, the repaired piece is worth far more than the original. And this is termed kuntsugi in Japanese. And then Ernie wrote to me in his email, he wrote, "Some therapists have taken note of this and adapted it to people with cracks or who are broken by trauma. That all is well and good, but kuntsugi requires more. The individual can be more complete, a more complete person than before the trauma. There should be some personal gold, silver, or platinum from the process." I want us to sit with that for just a moment, because my guess is that most of us, in the course of our lives, our decades, have experienced some form of trauma. But these words from Ernie, I think, are really important. So I'm gonna say them again, and I want you to really think about the wisdom in what he wrote. The individual, that's us, can be a more complete person than before the trauma. There should be some personal gold, silver, or platinum through the process, from the process. And I just invite us to sit with this as we move into this season. We just had Thanksgiving. December is starting, and during December, it's a sacred time of year in so many different faith traditions. We have Christmas, we have Hanukkah, we have the winter solstice, we have the Hindu holiday of lights. There's a lot to this month, and I invite us to be with who we are. I invite us to bring all of who we are into this time of year. And that means we get to bring the joy and the laughter. And some people love going shopping and purchasing gifts. And some people love decorating and putting out lights. And some people, like I said, are just trying to get through. And if you're one of the people that loves this time of year, embrace it and honor it and let this time of year be that rest for your soul, because it brings you renewal and joy and feeling refreshed. And if you are a person that's just trying to get through this time of the year, then I invite you to, with no guilt and with no second guessing, to allow yourself to go within, to slow down, to be with your grief, to shed some tears, to let your soul rest. If you need to hibernate, then hibernate. The bears are doing it. And if we allow ourselves to do that, we may be surprised that then we are able to emerge feeling a little bit refreshed. And we maybe then have the energy to say, actually, I see some of the beauty in this time of the year. I see some of the joy, and I'm going to go be part of it. We get to be part of it. The fun, the laughter, the light, the silence, and the darkness. It all belongs. And so, let us today sing together one of my favorite hymns, Spirit of Life, as we embrace the whole of who we are. Number 123 in your gray hymnal. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.